Ladies and gentlemen, this is Questlove Supreme. Today marks the conclusion of what I feel is an instant classic episode, as I expressed in the previous recording, that I personally like one-on-one QLSs, meaning one artist to the show as opposed to group scenarios. So that way, you know, it's always, you get two sides of a story, of the same story sometimes, or you get the same identical story. But previous episode, we talked to one of my favorite duos in music, one of the most successful duos in music. And now we are given the honor and the pleasure of speaking to the voice, the soundtrack, the personal soundtrack of my childhood. And I'm, you know, a Philadelphian. So this episode is doing me some pride right now. What else can I say? But the one and only Daryl Hall.
Hey.
Questlove Supreme. Welcome, sir.
All right.
By the way, Team Supreme, I'm sorry, I didn't even acknowledge your presence. How are,
Okay.
well, damn, you was waiting for that. Weren't you?
I was gonna say it's okay. It's Daryl Hall. We're all a little fanned out. It's fine.
No. But in my mind, I'm still feeling like this is a continuation of the episode. But yes, we can let the world know that maybe a week or two went by, and you know, yes. So how you doing, Laya?
I'm doing great. I'm ready. I'm so good.
You're
I feel like
excited.
this is life is complete, man. It really
Wait,
is.
I gotta ask something personal, even though this is inconsequential to our viewers who could only hear us and not see us, but I feel like every time you do an episode, you're doing it from another part of your house, or I see it me.
This
Only way.
Is this a
studio house.
Would you say, Daryl?
I said, this is actually my studio house.
This is mine too.
hey?
Okay.
Exactly. That's what it is, Amir. It's my studio house.
All right. Well, no, I'm impressed with every episode. You seem to be in a new part of your house that I've never seen before, and I'm really.
It's the
Must
only
with your
way I can
artwork.
get my Questlove Supreme brothers to truly come to my house. So yeah, this is the way I'm doing it. Maybe one day y'all come by.
Okay. Well, one of us will have to agree to get on a plane, but we'll say that for another episode.
Okay, you was here last week.
Unpaid Bill.
Yes, sir.
How's it going, sir?
Fantastic.
Congratulations to you.
How are you?
I'm great, man.
BAFTA.
You know,
Congratulations to you.
You've
I'm
been winning awards like hand over, whatever that expression is, and we have to do some flowers, Amir. Flowers for Amir. Congratulations.
I take
Smacking 'em
back.
up.
Yes, indeed.
And da-da,
Straight
and
up.
Back me with the
da-da,
flowers.
and da-da.
Yes. Thank you for that
I'm
deflection.
Fully proud of you. Well
Thank you.
done, man.
Well, you know, also you finished a milestone in the show that you're working on, Sesame Street. You finally finished I guess season 50, I assume.
We finished just last week, season 53, I think. 53.
Season 53.
Yeah.
Also, wait, this is what I do want to know.
Wow.
Because I'm not an active watcher of Sesame Street now that I'm 51 years old,
Ooh.
as I was when I was a kid. But you know, the death of Mr. Delgado,
Mhm.
aka Luis on Sesame Street. Was he still an active character on the show even up, or did he leave beforehand?
He left, but came back a little while ago. He was back and forth, but he was like a definite presence. All of the humans, all of the actors on that show sort of are always sort of omnipresent in that place. Bob and Amelia.
So like Maria, Bob, and
Maria.
Susan and Gordon, like they're still occasionally come back on the show to do stuff.
Yeah, like most recently they were around for season. We had a big reunion for season 50 a couple years ago, and they were definitely there for that. And I saw him at that, and he's a fantastic, like Emilio, like played the guitar really well and sang really well, and like he was just a consummate musician and a wonderful human being. It's really sad, but
yeah,
you know,
when you put me on the float, I think I got to meet some of them, and that was really cool.
I like that you make it seem like I physically placed you upon the Thanksgiving Day float, and I will take full credit for that.
Well, I'm trying to give you props, Bill, because I don't want people to think that you're just like the Flavor Flav sidekick. Like you're a major staple in the circle, man. You are,
Facts.
You're writing hit Broadway shows and producing platinum albums. And
just for the record, I'd be happy to be a Flavor Flav sidekick. I'm totally fine with that too. That's very nice.
I know that's
Well,
right,
I'm
Bill. You're
throwing
so
some of
hip
the-
hop.
I'm throwing some of these flowers back to you, Sugar
All right,
Steve.
flowers.
Sugar Steve, you okay? Even though you're upgrading your computer right now, you're doing this on your telephone.
I'm really good. Thanks for asking. I actually won a Schmucky Award last night, and I'm thinking about buying my
Makes
own
sense.
paper airplane.
Okay.
Just don't step on my punchlines in front of Daryl Hall.
Did you? I'm sorry. I didn't know you heard me. I'm sorry.
Anyway, Fontigolo. Good, sir.
I'm good, brother. I'm good, man. I'm good. Congratulations to you, man. I was happy to see that. Straight
Thank
up.
you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now we can finally get to
All right.
business. First of all, Sir Daryl Hall, are you in the world famous Daryl's house right now?
I'm in my studio house.
Okay, explain what that
I can
is. sir.
call
So
that
this is different than the Daryl's house that I've seen on television.
Yeah, it's a different house, an altogether
Ooh.
different house.
That is baller shit. I like this. I like where this is going already. If you guys could see what we see right now, like maybe besides Will Smith, I've not seen a person be so imaginative with their
Zoom
surroundings.
set up. Right.
Yes, this is
I'm
next.
just sitting in the living room, man.
He said,
I
I'm
might
just
have
sitting
to
in the
do
living
this.
Don't
room.
do anything too imaginative.
One light bulb.
Where I live.
One light bulb.
So as I said on the top of the show, we talked to your partner for over 5, I don't know, maybe 6 decades, John Oates, about his musical experiences in his life, and and now it's your turn, because although you two share common ground, you two also have done different endeavors, and so I kind of wanted to make this more one-on-one instead of like the group project.
Okay.
So for you right now, like where do you call home? Where do you reside?
Well, I'm in Connecticut right here,
Okay.
and I have a house. I have a house in London too, so I kind of go back and forth.
Nice. What part of London?
In Kensington.
Nice. Okay. I used to live in Kentish Town.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Kentish Town in London. When did you cop a spot in London? When?
Yeah, I've been there since the '70s,
Oh, wow.
What?
forever.
So you're a dual citizen.
Right, sorta.
Wow.
Why
Okay.
London? What made you choose to go over there?
I just had an affinity for it just from the very beginning. It reminded me of Philadelphia in some crazy way.
Oh, wow.
We a little cleaner than that. Wait a minute.
Well, yeah,
Well,
some parts, but
no, but he has a point, because I mean, again, the roots coming from Philly, we had to choose somewhere in Europe to live, and it was definitely something like, should we move to Paris? Should we move to France? And it was something about London that called us, and so
there's something familiar about it.
very much so. So thus, okay, well that's cool to hear. Like,
They have good
are
ears,
you in
too,
are
y'all.
you in a city part of London, or is it more of like a quiet place, or like what? Because I know oftentimes artists will have their city residence, and then they'll have a spot that is more quieter. I mean, I understand that now. Like, I never thought I'd be a person that would get a farm, but I just got a farm because I actually felt I'm more creative when I'm isolated and in silence. So for you, is having a dual housing situation more about like getting a spot that's quiet and then a part that's immersed in the city, or just to have a city in Europe just in case you just want to?
Well, it's actually kind of the same thing. I live out in the country here when I'm in America,
Okay.
and then my city house is in London, and I mean I have it's like a row house, townhouse, same
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
So is it important as a creative for you to have uh, a spot that's quiet and more isolated and allows you to be creative, or like, again, as a newbie person that just purchased his spot? I mean, I did it because the pressure of the pandemic forced me to do it, but otherwise I'd never understood artists that were like, yo, man, I need, the country life is important. Like, I mean, I get the importance of silence now, but obviously you got this house that you're in now way before the pandemic. So what was the attraction of, like, I'm thinking like rock stars wouldn't want to be so isolated outside of the chaos and the hustle and bustle of what the industry was. So what was your decision to get a country spot?
I don't know, man. I've always sort of had one foot in the country and one foot in the city. I grew up. I didn't grow up in Philadelphia. I grew up in Pottstown, out in Chester County, and
I kind of consider that Philly adjacent.
It is. It's
well, it
suburb.
is. But hey, I'm an old guy. It was the country in those days. It was really the country, and I grew up in a colonial house and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was. I grew up in that world. My family were farmers, and so I grew up that way. But I was also part of the city. It's always been kind of schizophrenic with me. It's
Okay.
it's city and country together, and I sort of need both of them. I need one to balance out the other side.
Do you remember what your very first musical memory was?
Oh man, probably seeing my well, my mother and father both were musicians. See my mother in a band. I mean, my mother was in a band in Pottstown, and I was like, yeah, from the age of 2 years old, I'd watch the band, and I always wanted to be the band leader. The guy that he had like a white coat on. Everybody else had red coats on. He had a white coat on. So yeah, I wanted to be that guy.
What does Daryl Hall's mom's voice sound like? What does her singing voice sound like?
Amazing voice. She was a soprano. She's 98 years old now, and
Wow.
She's still here? Yes, she
Still
is.
here.
What's up, man?
she still sings. But yeah, she's an amazing singer, amazing soprano. And my father was in a gospel group, a vocal group, and so I learned harmonies from him, and his brothers and his friends and all that. So I grew up in that whole world.
Were they closer to doo-wop or more Mills Brothers or like harmony? Like what was their
Church harmony, like
Quartet harmony.
yeah, gospel harmony.
Yeah, man.
okay, but when you say quartet, Fonte,
Right. Right.
I'm thinking of below,
I got
mean,
you. I know what you're saying.
right. Okay.
It was
I
a
see.
quartet. That's
I
what
see. What's your sibling situation? How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have a sister, one sister. She lives up here in Connecticut too, and
Is she musically inclined as well?
she is, but she's an artist. She does all my visuals. She does everything from my album covers to my T-shirts to everything. Yeah.
Really?
That's dope.
How long has she been collabing with you?
Well, as long as we've been alive.
Oh, so even in
I
the
love
days
it.
of like,
Yeah. She was the visual artist and I was the singer. We both do both things, but that's how it sort of panned out, even when we were kids.
okay. All right. So like in well, what was your I know that I've seen you as a keyboard player. I believe I've seen you play guitar once or twice. But what was your first weapon of choice growing up as far as the instrument that you
Piano. Yeah, when I was like 5 years old, I started taking piano lessons. But I was a singer before that. My mom taught me how to sing because she was sort of a vocal teacher too, and she taught me how to sing from age 0. I mean, I was always
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you have sort of history in Philadelphia proper.
Yeah.
So can you tell me what, like when you started gravitating towards metropolitan Philadelphia as opposed to outside of Pottstown or Pottsville?
That's town. Yeah.
Okay. At what
Yeah.
time did you start going to Philadelphia proper?
Sort of when I was a teenager, I would go in because they used to have trains in those days from Pottstown. So I used to go in, and my friends were in there, and I moved right out of high school. I moved to Philadelphia.
Okay. So you're talking about like the R5 or the R3, like those high speed trains that SEPTA.
Yeah, there was like the Reading Railroad and all that stuff.
Yeah. All right. So I even when we asked John about the time that you guys put in during those years, in the 60s in Philadelphia. He said that you would have more intricate stories because of your involvement with like Gamble and Huff and like all those groups around. But could you basically describe to me what the Philly environment was? I guess, you know, your teen years was in the 60s. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you wanted to see your like of the acts of the day that you saw, like where would you see them and what acts would you see of the day?
Well, I used to go to the Uptown. I mean, I lived in the Uptown basically, and I would see everybody there, I got involved right away with Kenny and Leon. I actually did a talent show at the Uptown with this group I had, the Temp Tones, we won the talent show. So I got a deal, and I went to Virtue Studios and did a record with the Romeos, with Kenny Gamble and the Romeos.
Ha, with the Romeos, yeah.
What year was this around?
It's 1967.
67. Gotcha.
So can
So,
I ask you?
in-
I just wanted. You must have been a crazy extrovert, not very shy. Like you sound like you were crazy confident from the jump. Because to go into Philly and just dive in and just talk to folks.
You know what? I always had confidence in the music area. I'm not exactly I wouldn't call myself an extrovert by any means.
Okay.
But when you get into music, then yes, suddenly I shine. I you know, I do have confidence. And
So
did.
all right. So, you know, coming from, I mean, yeah, I'll claim hip hop as the gas that runs my car. But, you know, to be a person that's really committed to real hip hop, you have to have some sort of education in soul music and really just all types of music, because hip hop is kind of the amalgamation of all the music that came before it. But, you know, I know that to be a first generation hip hopper and to see, you know, people amazed, you know, when acts like the Beastie Boys would, like, there was a point where like the novelty of the white guy being quote down seemed like a rather novel idea. But was it unusual for you in the late 60s? Because I'm assuming that you're kicking it with the brothers in terms of like, you know, if you're at the, you know, having met like Danny and the Juniors and the Dovells and those other like Philly doo-wop legends that were kind of around my father's era, like, you know, I'm not hearing them tell me stories about, yeah, man, we used to always go downtown, whatever. But for you, was there not a novelty factor, but was it unusual for people to see a white guy be so immersed in soul in the mid to late 60s?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem so unusual, believe it or not. It was a different time. I don't know, man. I mean, when you talk about the Dovells, they all went to Overbrook. I mean, those guys, they were in it big time.
Really? I'll be honest with you, because like a lot of my education just comes from like the revival shows that they were doing in the 70s and 80s, like past the, I don't know if I have a visual of any of the Philly legends in their prime, you know, late 50s, 60s, because obviously I wasn't born then.
I
But
knew those guys really well.
okay. So
Yeah, I knew Mike Frieda and Lenny Barry were really close friends of mine. And
really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they were real, man. I mean, they came from the real thing.
Well, I gotta ask an eyewitness. Have you ever seen my dad before? This is one of the weirdest questions
Good question.
I've
you
ever
seen my
asked
dad?
on this show.
One
Have you ever seen my dad?
One of the first records I ever bought was your dad.
Boom.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
See, again, I only know the dad. I only know my dad from the second phase of his career, because there really wasn't documentation of, you know, of his career before then. So I can only go on word of mouth of, oh, I used to see your dads all the
Well,
time.
shoot,
So,
Daryl got stories. Then I want to know.
Well,
yeah. So, okay, like, can you tell me what a typical lineup was if you were going to the Uptown in Philadelphia? Which, for our listeners out there, you know, there are a few houses for black acts that were quote unquote upscale in the Chitlin circuit. If you're in New York, the Apollo's a highlight. If you're in DC, the Howard. If you're in Chicago, is it the State Theater? I believe.
Yeah,
I think it's the State. Yeah, and if you're in Philadelphia, you're at the Uptown. But could you explain like what a typical bill would look like? Like, is it hosted by Georgie Woods? Is it 5 acts of the day? Like, how many? Is it an all day thing? Like, do you go there 12 in the afternoon? You stay till all the shows are over?
I used to do that occasionally. Yeah. Uh,
Mhm.
it was. I mean, it was whoever was popular at the time. It would be anybody from like Billy Stewart, the Mad Lads, to Gladys Knight and the Pips and the Temps, obviously,
Mhm.
and uh, everything in between. I mean, it just depended who was touring at the time.
So an average show, like was there ever a time? I know that for a lot of these acts, it was about pairing. Like it would be 5 acts of the day. So when did the era of just like, my generation, if you go see, okay, Run DMC, you're expecting an hour show of just that act. But I mean, was there ever an act that, I mean, I know that James Brown was his own self-contained unit, but even he had a variety show. But
Yeah.
was it just expected for like an act to come out and do 15 to 20 minutes and then that's it and you're
That was,
out?
yeah, that was usually the way it was.
Oh.
People didn't do long shows. It was usually some kind of review, and a mixture of people, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never knew
So-
that's what review meant. Thank y'all. I never knew that it meant it was a time limit when you say review, you're referring to a show.
Yeah, like, just from the days of like, well, I mean, most people
Motown
Sort of
review
cite,
Right.
yeah, or even like the modern era of like where Ma Rainey's
festivals, right?
yeah, Ma Rainey's Traveling Circus, and then that sort of, morphed into vaudeville, which then morphed into the review, which I mean, at the time, only Motown and James Brown really had a strong enough presence to carry, other people with them.
Multiple
But
acts, yeah.
yeah, back in the day, it was the radio guy. It was the Georgie Wood, the Funk Master Flex of that period that would throw these shows and whatnot. So were you ever in a house band situation? Like usually if we talk to New York guys and they say like, I was a backing band in the Apollo. Like, were you ever in a house band situation having to back these acts up when they came down?
I didn't do it at the Uptown. I did it at a couple other places in the Philadelphia area. I would do like I would play with the Stylistics or somebody like that. But I didn't do a lot of background playing. No, no, no.
Okay, so if you're playing with the Stylistics, today it's easier for acts to, because of the internet, I can easily Google something, I can easily reference something. But in your day, how easy is it to pick up someone's music, or is this just a thing where like you hear it on the radio a few times and you instantly know what the chords are? Like, do you get enough prep time to? I'm just trying to figure out the mind state of a person that is.
I mean, we used to do. I worked at Sigma a lot, and I did a lot of recording with people, and just read chord charts. I mean, that was how you did it. Just
All right, so you're a chord chart reader. Okay, that's what's up. Can you name some of the singles that you played on in those like early?
I used to work a lot. I can't even remember. I used to work a lot with Norman Harris. He was one of the guys, the guitar
Right.
player,
Mhm.
and MFSB, whatever. And man, I can't. I so long ago, man. I did like I remember
You know what I mean?
I remember doing a Clyde McPhatter record. I mean, like
Right.
that sticks in my mind. We did a lot of stuff where we would do demos and it wouldn't even get anywhere. There was this guy George Tinley. I used to work with him. I think I played. I think I played on a Delphonics record.
Okay.
You think you played?
Was it a good living as, I mean, for you, like in that time period,
It
was it for you, like, is it a good living? Like, okay, I'm a session musician, or did you instantly know Nah, it's in front of the microphone. Like that's where that's where I
Yeah.
want to be.
Yeah, I wanted to be in front of the microphone. I liked doing it, and it was an experience, and I learned it. And I would be like, I was never, I was like third string or whatever, but
Mhm.
I was still in school, and I did a lot of writing too. It was sort of a combination of studio work and writing at the same time. I worked with this guy John Madera. We talk about Danny and the Juniors. He wrote
Mhm.
he wrote at the Hop, and he was
Really?
yeah he was at the Schubert Building, and
Yeah.
he was on
Oh,
the
okay.
sixth floor, and then Gamble and Huff were like a couple floors down. Tommy Bell was in there, so we all knew each other and hung out together, and uh, so it was a combination of being in the studio and writing at the same time. Yeah.
Well, at the time period where Gamble and Huff sort of, or at least they dropped the anchor as the alphas in this Sound of Philadelphia thing, which always confused me because I'm assuming that not having the aid of liner notes when I'm listening to either their work or or the work of Dexter Wanzel or any of the other second string Philly International people. I'm assuming that this is all under the guise of Gamble and Huff, only later to find out that they were just all using the same session musicians and had nothing to do with each other. But sonically, it all sounded like the sound of Philadelphia and Gamble and Huff. Did you ever at one point like try to approach them and say like, "Hey, I produce and I singer songwrite. Like, can I join the fray?" Or was it instantly like,
Well,
"I want to establish my own thing and not be under"?
yeah, that's what happened actually. Is it Kenny actually said to me, "Would you like to come to Philly International and write and do whatever, record?" And that was just when I was getting ready to leave to go to move to New York with John, and I said, "Well, I was tempted, I got to say, but I figured that what we wanted to do, what became the Hall and Oates sound or whatever. It was a Philly sound, but it wasn't the Gamble and Huff sound, And I wanted to do my own thing, just what you said. I wanted to create my own version of Philly music, and so I turned that idea down.
John had casually mentioned how you two had met, but I gotta hear the details. He he mentioned that I guess
Fight?
a fight had broken out at a show, and that's how you
Mhm.
two met. But
The
could you tell us the
DAS
story of
show? Yeah.
how you met?
Yeah, I mean, we've told that story so many times. I mean, singly and together. I mean,
Our listeners have not heard it, I guarantee you.
it was a record hop out in the Adelphi Ballroom in West Philly, and
On 52nd Street.
yeah, and that's where it was. And I forget who was on the bill. I remember Howard Tate was on the bill, and Five Stair Steps, and then they had the bottom of the bill was the Temptones and John's band, and we were waiting to go on. We were and those days shit happened, and some kind of fight broke out, and they closed the whole thing down, and it was on a second floor, so we had to get in an elevator, go downstairs to go to the street, and that's how I met John. He was in the elevator with me, and I said, hey, what, you go to Temple University, blah blah blah, and we started kind of being friends, hanging out.
Mhm.
What was your major at Temple?
Music.
Okay. Did they have a RTF program back then, or was that like?
Sure.
Yeah, John was RTF, I believe. He was a journalism RTF kind of major, but I was a music major.
First of all, how many members were the Temptones? I know you guys were
It was
Temptations influence, but
a revolving. We called it Temptones because of Temple University, not because of Temptations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
see, okay, I thought it was.
But yeah, it was revolving, but it was basically at the same time singing would be four people. Yeah, it was a
Okay,
quartet.
I get it. So, what was the deciding factor that told you like, okay, well, let me try this out. You know, leaving the like it's the Timtones only thing. It's like casual school stuff, casual Philadelphia stuff, and they weren't serious about it, or were you more serious than they were?
Well, yeah, probably. I probably was, but it all just came out of street corner music. I mean, that's how it all started. You know,
Mm.
singing together, and then we decided to call it something. And it was various people coming in and out, and and then we eventually we got a little rhythm section to back us up, and John wound up being one of those people at the very end, and that's
Okay.
how it sort of continued. You know, the whole it kind of morphed into just me and John working together and writing songs, things
Okay.
like.
Um, as a singer, at least back then, like who was your North Star? Who, as
Well,
far as like who you idolized as a singer, and
I
then I guess who did you want to, who are you not emulating, but who do you felt like influenced your vocal style?
Oh well, I mean, I was trying. I mean, you know, I mean, Smokey. I love Smokey Robinson. I mean, I love,
Mm.
and then I loved all the singers of the Temptations. I was really into all that stuff. But a lot of street corner people. You know, your father, man. I loved him. Um, um, Later, you know, Felipe Wynn. You know,
Oh yeah, spinners.
Wow.
and these are the people that I idolize and that I won't. Yeah, I guess when I was a kid, emulate. Yes, for sure.
You know
Well,
who
I meant
mentioned,
just in terms of influence. That's all.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Steve?
I was going to say, Costello mentioned Mr. Wind also from the Spinners as
Oh yeah,
like his all-time, vocal idol.
There you go.
yeah. No, he was a
Yeah.
monster.
Daryl, can I just ask what your parents are thinking on your journey? Like, did they expect you to just be an art? I mean, it's a blessing that you had two parents that were artists, but were they thinking that's where you were going to go, and were they happy about it?
They always supported me. Always supported me. There was never any question about it. To tell you the truth, um,
Mm.
you know, they were always made. You know, they wanted to make sure I was going to like do something that I would make some money at, right?
Right.
Hopefully, but it was all. You know, they always supported me. Always, always.
That's so dope, man.
Yeah.
I sneak in here, Quest, for a second.
Yeah.
Just one question. With John, was the chemistry with you guys mostly on the songwriting tip, or was it a musical thing, or vocal harmony kind of thing?
It's, it was it was sort of songwriting more than anything. More than anything, and he sort of. I was interested in what he was doing because he was way out of my realm of experience. You know, he liked bluegrass music and all the stuff that I'd never heard of. You know, or I heard of, but I had never heard. And I was sort of, you know, I was in my student mode, so I was learning about all these things, and so I was really interested in what he brought to the table that way. Uh, uh, so it was more of a friendship than anything else. To tell you the truth, I mean, it was like we decided we were going to share a stage but be very separate, which we've never changed. You know, he has his own musical style. I got my own one. We somehow fit it together when we worked together. But yeah, it was more. It really evolved from a friendship to something a little more than that.
But
The
you,
original Outcast.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Original
But you-
Mob Deep.
but
Yeah.
just sorry, I'm a journalist. I need a follow-up question.
No, go ahead, Steve. This
White
is rare.
House. Go
So-
ahead.
No, I just wondering that with regards to the songwriting, like the breakdown, you both write music and you both wrote lyrics, and how did that work?
Occasionally, we would work together. That's how it worked. Like the song "She's Gone." That's a.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, I would call it exception to the rule, if you want the truth. John writes his own kind of songs, and I write mine. And occasionally we would collaborate on lyrics, and I would throw things at him. And I also collaborated with other people, like the Allen sisters, Sarah Allen and her sister Jana, wrote a lot of songs with me,
Are-
and John would jump into that too sometimes.
Are you protective of your work to the point where you're not easily persuaded or persuadable when it comes to like, okay, if you submit a song, is it, this is it, or is it, hey, why don't you try this idea? No, fix that around. I mean, I could see the producer doing that. I mean, in terms of like if Todd's producing or whatever, but like with you and Daryl, like, are you two allowed to offer unsolicited
Oh, yeah,
suggestions of a?
absolutely. The reason I love collaboration, I like bouncing off ideas back and forth. Uh, John's participation in my songs is more like, "What do you think of this?" And then he'd say, "Well, why don't you try that, or sing that, or do that?" But I would generate the song, or sometimes one of the like Jana Allen would bring a song in, and I would do that with her. Um,
Okay.
works like that. Yeah, very flexible. Very.
You
Okay.
you mentioned She's Gone, but I don't think we got to hear you when you broke down the workflow of that song.
We sat and wrote that. John came up with the chorus,
Mm.
and it was sort of a more folky kind of style. And I said, okay, why don't we do it this way? And I started playing that piano riff that is the signature of the song, and
Right.
then and I did all that, and then we sat down and we wrote lyrics about it. I mean, that was a real Hall and Oates song. Uh, we sort of pooled our experiences that were things that were going on with both of us separately at the time, and we kind of mixed it together and turned it into the what the lyrics are of that song. And then we took it to Atlantic when we played it for Arif. He's the one that put that crazy modulation idea into it.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I was going to
Quest.
ask you,
Go
man.
Quest.
That shit scares the
Do
shit
it.
out of me.
Do it.
Shut up, man. Yeah, I mentioned how much, even though they edited it out of my they edited it out on the HBO version. I told the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame people that,
Yeah.
hearing that modulation build up, that scared the bejesus out of me. It was too much drama, man. But yeah, and the way that the traffic thing with the violins.
Yeah.
Man, I'd turn on all the lights in the house, and then Boogeyman gonna get my ass. Fuck that.
That's Arif Martin, man.
Man, I love that song. Okay, right before your deal with Atlantic, like how does a group pursue a record deal in the 70s? Now we're in a time where you can go viral on YouTube. Someone sees it, and chances are they'll stalk you and see what your situation is and sign to me. But how do you gain the attention of the industry? Like when you and John are like, all right, we're going to do this. What's the step in the process of getting a record deal?
We knocked on doors in New York City, and everybody liked us, and then we'd get the word, well, they liked you, but they turned us down. Well, so we went. Long story short, we actually went to L.A. and uh, we went out there and we were knocking around. We were introduced to some people, and John and I were introduced to this guy named Earl McGrath. Earl
Mhm.
McGrath, who had this tiny label. That was an indie label subsidiary of Atlantic. It was called Clean Records.
Yes.
And Earl wanted to sign us. He liked what he heard, and he said, "Okay, I'll sign you." And then he took it back to New York, and we auditioned for Ahmet and Arif. And I remember I had the flu, man. They gave me this piano where all the notes were sticking on it, and it was the worst audition in the world.
Hmm.
And whatever happened, Arif really liked it. Ahmed really liked it. So they basically stole us from Earl, and we wound up going to Atlantic, and that's how we did it.
Oh wow.
Okay. So my dad mentioned what we commonly say as a showcase. I don't know if showcases are as common now as they were back then. But when you're saying we audition, is it a thing where you book a gig at the Bottom Line or a club and they come see you, or are you in a confined SIR situation? Or I know like Atlantic has their own facility and room like that. Like, do you set up there and then you just perform for 10 suits in a room? Is that process more jarring and weird, like to
Yeah, it was really, like I said, all the conditions were the worst. We were in this little room with this shitty piano. I mean, with the key sticks stuck, and we had and I, across from me and the other side of the room was Ahmed Arif, and I don't think it might have been Jerry Wexler. I can't remember, but they were
wow.
all sitting there watching us, and it was just me and John, and I'm playing like I can't even remember what I played, and. Uh, and I thought it went terribly, but I guess they saw something. You know, they saw through it all, and that's how it was. It was a really personal audition.
Can you talk about like Mr. Martin is one of my idols because one of my favorite groups ever was the Average White Band. So having read his name on Average White Band and Aretha Franklin and Donny Hathaway. Can you talk about working with Arif Martin as far as his production style and what
He
was it
was
like for you?
he was the greatest producer, man. I mean, in my opinion, Arif and Quincy are the two great producers of the era, and
Wow.
he allowed Arif allowed the artist to do. He was so flexible. I can't even describe it. It was he allowed you to shine. He had this uncanny ability to figure out what it is that you were good at doing and where the spark was and developing that spark. And he could add all kinds of. He had no boundaries at all. He was he would mix genres. He would. Mixed eras,
Mhm.
everything all at once together. Whatever the song needed, or he thought it would need, he would just add it. And he had an incredible, like an encyclopedic knowledge of every kind of music, and it was a really amazing. And he was such a gentle guy, but yet
Mhm.
firm. He knew how to drive the bus, and he was an amazing producer. That's all I can say about it.
Was he hands on in terms of soup to nuts?
Yeah,
As far as picking the songs, picking the mixer, staying there for the mix,
yeah.
sequencing your album, suggesting singles. Like when he takes on a project, is he literally watching every iota of it, or is it like, okay, guys, I won't be here next week, but that like Jerry's going to sit in for me. I got to work with Aretha for this thing, and or is it like once he's on your project, it's just you and you alone, or are you scheduled in between other stuff?
No, he would do it one at a time. And you mentioned Average White Band, who are good friends of mine. Uh, he went directly from Carly Simon to Hall and Oates to Average White Band. That was the three things in a row he did
Okay.
at that period of time. But he would devote whatever it was to each one. He didn't mix and match. Um, and
Because I was wondering if he loses his ears, like if he's working with you on Thursday, and then he has to start doing pick up the pieces tomorrow. Like, is it possible for him to lose his ears or the
well,
flow of it?
I don't think it was because he had the ability to do that. He would just switch projects. But he didn't. You mentioned before he didn't have anything to do with picking singles or anything. He would A&R it. I'd sit there and play songs for him, and he said, "Well, this is a good one. Are you okay? Let's work on this." And he would do that. But and then to develop the song from beginning to end.
Okay.
But then, and once the song was done, then it was over. You know, he had nothing to do with like this is a good single. Like, that was for other people, which is the way it should have been, to tell you the truth.
Was
And
he a not a taskmaster, but I always wanted to know as far as like what's the hard part of the process of recording? Is it capturing a compelling performance with the musicians versus like for you? Okay, so you do the line share of vocals. Like, how is he as a vocal coach in terms of? Okay, that's a good take. That's not a. Actually, let me skip to an actual example. So a song like She's Gone, which is full of drama.
Yeah.
And of course, once you get to the payoff key of that modulation build, you gotta sell that she's gone. Like, how is he nurturing as a producer in terms like that, or is it like do it again, do it again, do it again? Like,
No, that particular one, that was just, what can I say? That was just inspiration from me. I just did that. I just opened my mouth, and that's
Felt
what came.
that shit.
I
I
can't even
love it.
take that note anymore, by the way. But
and he lets you suggest
just-
things, and
he let it happen. He let it happen. He went, oh, that was really good. Afterward he was saying, yeah, that was the shit. He didn't even think about saying, can you do that again? He just,
okay.
it was there. It was what it was.
First take.
So, I know the story She's Gone is that, not many people know that the Tavares brothers, from Boston, actually took that song to the top 10 before you guys did, even though your version is, and now in our minds, the definitive version. But, were you kind of confused or perplexed that your first hit single was actually a cover song of your song?
Yeah, it was a weird thing. Boy, it's a long time ago, but our enthusiasm
Right.
overrode our frustration, if you know what I mean by that.
But is it like seeing your girlfriend with another guy, or is
Yep.
it just like, hey, I'm in the top 10 and I wrote the song, so here comes the money?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I was pissed off because I just felt that was the way of the world at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have any expectations. Whatever happened, I rode the horse with whatever direction it was going in. And if Tavares has a hit with it, okay. Well, I wish it was me, but it was them. So that's all I could say.
What was the decision behind working with Todd on the War Babies record and not staying with RF to see if Arif, I'm sorry, to see if you guys can go further with it?
I felt that I wanted to do something completely different. I don't know what my mindset was in those days. I moved to New York City. I wanted to sort of like expand my musical world outside of my sort of my Philadelphia, that the Philly sound thing, and I wanted to go completely different. I don't know why I did, but I did, and I thought that maybe working with Todd would be a good thing because he did the same thing. He's a Philly guy that left New York and created his own musical world, and I thought that it would be interesting to see what would happen if he would get together with us and what would come out of it, and that was really what it was all about.
And were you
Was
an
it-
immense fan of his early records or the albums that he was doing at the time?
Yeah, I liked what he was doing. I really liked what he was doing at the time with Utopia. It was really.
Okay, well, having discovered his discography 20 years after the fact, I discovered him once. It's already established that this guy's like a crazy genius, but at the time when it's coming out, was it unusual? Because I mean, Todd's whole canon is really, it was forward thinking for the time period, because he's like one of the examples of what we now call the bedroom musician. Of course, we're used to it now, post Prince, and now anyone practically today is a bedroom musician, but that was like really unusual back then. And he would push the buttons creatively on all of his records. Was he ever trying to pass his zany ideas on to you guys, like, to really push the edge of art as far as it can go?
Well, I was into that headspace, so he didn't have to push me. I was right there with him. I said, "How far can we go?" That was the whole idea.
And how receptive was Atlanta to this at the time?
Not that receptive.
Okay.
Hence RCA.
I get it.
Right.
I get it. Can you talk about Sarah Smile and just the inspiration behind it?
Well,
It's one of your most loved songs, you know.
yeah, I was uh, Sarah Allen, me, and John were sharing an apartment, a two-bedroom apartment in Yorkville, and so there was, I had a keyboard and I just played the song. I was writing the song. It just came out of real life. I mean, I can't say more than that. I just wrote the song about what was going on around me.
I mean, was she receptive in these flowers that you're? I'm now mocking unpaid bill. Was he receptive, or was it like cringy? Like, ah, man, like now you're going to immortalize me for the rest of. Like, what was her feeling towards this song?
She was. Uh,
And actually, can you? How did you guys meet?
we met in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Actually, John met her and introduced me to her, and we all sort of. She worked for a charter airline, and
Okay.
that's where the Las Vegas turnaround came from, and and we all decided to move to New York at the same time.
Okay.
It was like that, and
Could she sing?
she can sing. She's not a
Okay.
great singer, but she can sing, and she's actually a really good songwriter.
Wow.
Yeah.
In retrospect, since you didn't know it was going to be such a hit song, would you have changed the name if you would have known you'd be singing the song so often?
Oh, man, I don't know. After Sandy and I split up, man, she said she couldn't go to the supermarket for about 2.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to say, how awkward is it? How awkward is it if, like, I'll never sing that song again if you guys break up and
Yeah, but that song transcends relationships and all that.
That's good.
It's bigger than that.
And every Sarah in the world thinks it's just about her. So it's great.
It's true.
That's true.
So the time period between I'm about to say the silver cover, the Daryl Hall and John Oates self-titled record with
Yeah, still
Sarah
around.
on it. Yeah. Between that and between I think Faces, there was kind of a period, or not Faces, Voices, forgive me. In 80, that 5-year period where you guys weren't exactly sticking in terms of finding an audience that's receptive to you. Just between that period, what was it like between 75 and 80?
Well, we had Rich Girl first.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Oh,
but
yeah.
Yeah, but it was in music it was a transitional time. There was that weird shit going on, rock versus disco and all that, and man, that put us in a really strange place because it was a time of categorization and what's cool and what's not cool and all this stuff, and it was a hard to figure out how to maneuver through all that. It was a really strange time, and it seemed like in 1980 it turned around and something else happened. Also, we started producing ourselves, and
okay.
that changed. I don't know. I think the world changed and we changed.
So having spoken with our previous QLS guest, Denise Williams, about her experiences, I know that David Foster produced the Along the Red Ledge record and the Static record.
Right.
What was it about? What was it like working with David Foster? And I'm trying to. It's weird because whenever David Foster enters the picture for any artist, at least between the period of like the late 70s to the mid 80s, it's rather controversial. But as far as his work with Earth, Wind and Fire, Denise Williams, Chicago, like whenever there's a documentary, there's always like, and then David Foster came and it's like, dun, 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 and he always drastically changes the sound. So one, why did you guys choose David Foster? And what was that experience like working with him?
Well, actually, Tommy Mottola chose him. So,
I okay. Well, let me ask you. Well, at the time, I mean, he wasn't the Tommy Mottola I grew up knowing, like the established CBS, executive. How did you guys discover Tommy Mottola?
we discovered each other. He man, I got something in my throat. I've known Tommy since he was 20 years old. He,
Wow.
he was
Whoa.
working, he was working at Chapel Music. He was our first manager. We were a trio. It was Mottola, me, and John, and that's. I mean, he was our manager.
I can't imagine Tommy Mottola as a teenager.
He wasn't that different. He was pretty much the same, just younger.
And how is he
just-
good enough to be your manager as a teen? Like, how did you see that in a teenager?
Yeah, what did he show y'all? Yeah.
He's one of those people who just acts like a manager, even if he's a kid.
Oh, yeah.
So
Gotcha.
when did was he managing guys from the beginning, the very beginning?
Yeah, we were his first project, or whatever you want to call it. We were a team. It was me, John, me, and Tommy, and it was that way all the way up till he discovered Mariah, man, and then he dumped me.
Wow.
Wow.
Soundbite for yes. Okay. So what? Obviously, something changes once the Voices album comes, and it's
Wait, Amir,
Oh.
before we leave the 70s,
go back.
I don't, is Voices leaving the 70s? That's 80. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to ask you a question about, everybody's always talking about the Hall & Oates albums, and rightfully so, but you also release solo records. And in 77, you worked with Robert Fripp on Sacred Songs. So can you tell us what was the impetus for releasing a solo project in that year? And what was the story? It took like 3 years for it to come out.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we're talking right now is because I have a whole project that I'm releasing all my solo records. I have a whole like parallel universe of music that I've been doing since the '70s. But to talk about Robert, Robert and I became friends, and we just decided we were going to try and see what would happen if we worked together, and we did that album in 70. What was it? 78, 77?
77 is when it was recorded. Yeah.
And immediately ran up against the machine that was unreceptive to the idea that I was not doing Rich Girl Jr.
Mhm.
And was doing something different, and they didn't want to hear about it, and that's been sort of a recurring theme with whenever I do my projects. It always sort of takes the back seat to the cash cow, and very frustrating. And
Have you ever wanted to keep a song for yourself, or are you basically just saying that?
Well, I write for projects.
Okay.
No difference to me. It depends on who I'm working with. Um, so I don't think I ever said I'm going to hold this song for a solo record or hold this song for a Hall & Oates record or anything like that.
One of the very first sounds of a drum machine that I've ever heard was, I mean, at the time that I was aware of it, was I Can't Go For That. As far as like technology is concerned and all those things, like for you, can you just explain how intricate or how involved you were with like finding new sounds and whatnot? I don't know if it's like you purposely wanted to find a new sound, but I Can't Go For That was such a radical sound than what was kind of the standard for what was sonically the standard for music. Can you just explain that process? I mean, it's so stripped down, but so timeless at the same time.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It happened by accident. There was no plan. I sat down and I turned on a Roland Compu rhythm, which is the simplest drum machine that you could ever imagine. And and I pushed rock and roll one, which is that beat. And I started playing. I had this Korg organ, and I started playing the bass line to it, and then I started playing the right hand to it, and that's where the song came from. I mean, it all just happened spontaneously, and there was no plan to. I was just using what was in front of me. It was really like that.
Oh, so in your mind, you didn't think like, wow, this is some revolutionary.
No,
Like you mentioned Quincy Jones earlier, having worked with both of them. Can you? Are there any stories or experiences from that? How surreal was that night doing USA for Africa?
well,
I know that you were part of the We Are the World recording.
it was one of the weirdest things that I've ever done in my life.
Talk about it.
Talk about it. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
go.
go ahead.
Well, first of all, I mean, the whole idea is that you're not allowed to bring anybody in with you into the room. So that's a big change for most people, you know, because everybody's got their people that they walk around with and they hang with and they depend on and do whatever. And no one was allowed in the room except for the actual artists that were performing and working. So we were all in there together and didn't know everybody. I mean, it was an outrageous group assemblage of people. I mean, it was like Ray Charles sitting at the piano, and Diana was there, and Tina Turner, and I mean, on and on and on, and it was nobody knew how to act because
It was awkward.
it was awkward. So everybody
Mm.
reverted to being like an eighth grade chorus because we were all standing on those, you know, up
The
on
bleachers. Yeah.
and that's how people started acting. They started acting like kids, and everybody's like making these weird kind of like kid jokes and stuff, and everybody asking each other for their autographs and all this kind of thing, and really being really open. I've never seen a group of artists be so open with each other as we all were that night. And it went on too. It went on well into the night. You know, some people were still there at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and
Oh, man.
In cutting
it was crazy. It was a crazy experience.
in cutting those vocals, is it intimidating like doing it in front of other artists, or are you the kind of guy that needs to be isolated in a room alone to give your best performance? Like, what's your modus operandi? What do you prefer?
Actually, I like doing it in front of people. It works. It works for me. I mean,
So that pressure is good for you.
yeah, yeah. It makes me do my best work. Uh, I just opened my mouth and said that little bit that I did. I just sang it. That was it. You know, in one take. But some people had to redo their stuff.
We heard.
Everybody was different. You know.
I get it. I would also like to ask you about the Apollo record with Eddie and David. Um, well, okay, you told me that Temptones were more based on tempo. I always swear it was from the Temptations, but um, could you describe your fandom for the Temptations, like, and how that moment was that a special moment, or was it just like, okay, that was cool? And
No, no, no. It was one of these special moments. I mean, you're hitting on all the things that actually matter. Uh, yeah. With the Temptations were Temple University, but I idolized the Temptations, and I got to know them back in those days.
Wow.
There's a picture of me with those guys back then in 1967, and um, and I really did get to know them all and hung out with them, sang with them, did all that kind of stuff. I was especially friends with Paul Williams and Eddie.
you knew Paul Williams?
Wow.
Oh God, please, could you?
Yeah,
Okay,
what
I've
was he
never
like,
heard a Paul
man?
Williams story in my life. Can you just
Straight up.
describe?
I took him one time. I took him to Linton's Diner out in West Philadelphia in Overbrook Park, and and I was the celebrity of the evening, man, because I brought him into this fucking diner.
Oh yeah, everybody was like, "Yo!"
We brought Paul Williams because everybody was a Temptations fan, and I brought him into the place, man. And yeah, I really like Paul. I had a lot of heart to heart talks with Paul, man. And he used to listen to the records and listen to my songs and stuff.
I was just about to ask you, what did some of the guys think of your voice and what you did? Like, what did the Temptations say about that?
I actually sometimes after hours I'd go in one of their rooms or whatever, and they'd all sit around and sing. And
Wow.
David was never there. David was never there. He was always somewhere.
Yes.
So I'd take David's parts and I'd sing. I'd sing the harmony.
Really?
And they would say, "What? I just want to. I feel like I want to know about the first time they heard your voice." And there's like, what?
Well, I guess they saw what it or heard what they heard. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all I can say.
Yeah, the fact they let you come in the room, that says it all.
Yeah, I mean,
That's true too.
one of the double beds, and sing songs.
Shit. Damn.
Wow. That's okay. So I mean, for me, that's like to make an album with my idol. That is special. I'm glad that was a good experience for you. Can you talk about the any memories of the Three Hearts and a Happy Ending Machine record? I know that by that point, even though you two will have made like one or your final, at least of that Hall & Oates run, the one for Arista, in making that record and working with David Stewart and oh my God, I didn't even mention T-Bone, your bass player, and your musicians. What was that for you? What was that process like?
Well, Dave and I, again, I tend to work with people that I get friendly with first.
Okay.
Dave and I got friendly, and we started writing songs together right away. I mean, we're still really close friends, and it was very natural. He had his own studio in London, and actually we started it in Paris because he just wanted to do something different, and we wound up doing a good part of that album in Paris. But T-Bone was sort of in the middle of it all. He was the voice of reason because Dave is very. He and I are very similar. We just go for it. And it's all over the place, and it's very loose and spontaneous. And T-Bone was sort of holding down the fort, and he was the voice of reason within it all. And so that's what it was like. It was a lot of fun making that record.
How did you guys induct him? Even before like we got to know musicians or whatnot, you guys had like a really charismatic band. So, I knew of T-Bone. I knew of your guitarist.
GE.
It was
Oh
G.
yeah, G. Smith.
Yeah, G.
Those
Smith from
cats.
Saturday Night Live. Yeah.
Like, how did you guys assemble that particular band? Were they just like New York's finest, and you knew already?
Happened. Let me think. GE was working with Dan Hartman,
Okay.
and now don't ask me how that all happened.
Oh, instant replay, Dan Hartman. Okay.
Yeah, that Dan Hartman, and then and Dan wasn't working, so somehow GE. Man, I can't remember. Somehow he got introduced to me, and I said, "Do you want to join the band?" And I brought him in, and who else was playing? I think it was Jerry Marotta. Yeah, Jerry Marotta was playing drums with us.
Okay.
So it kind of happened gradually, and then we were looking for a bass player, and we. The guy that we were using couldn't do it anymore. Oh, it was John Siegler. He went back to Todd or something because he was working with Todd Rundgren, and T-Bone auditioned, and yeah, there he is, man. I said, well, this guy's a monster. And so
I forgot to mention on John's episode, but well, I mentioned that when you guys were coming on the Tonight Show, and unfortunately you had to cancel because T-Bone had passed away 2 days before. I forgot to also mention, at least for our fans, that that's T-Bone that's the bass player on Curtis Blow's The Breaks.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a legendary cat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did that before he joined us. That was his first thing he did. He did. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh shit. I did not know. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When after the initial implosion of Hall and Oates, like how hard was it to come to that decision after the Oh Yeah record and you guys going your separate ways to do your solo endeavors? Like, did you know that at least that initial run of Hall and Oates from 72 to 88 that you had enough at that point? Like,
Well, it only looks that way when you look back on it. I mean, when we were in it, we just said, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We never really stopped making records. We made records through the '90s.
well, I know you did it, but it was always billed as like a comeback record or like a reunion album,
It was
which
more other people's perceptions than ours. But
okay.
we sort of morphed into just this into a touring band, and that's really what we are now. You know, we're a performance band. We don't really, you know, we have this outrageous body of work that we can draw from, and that's really where we come together at this point, and it's sort of, it just turned into that, and we decided to be more individuals, which is what I think tends to happen as you go on in life. You want to become more yourself, and it's part of maturity or whatever, and knowing yourself, and that's where we're at right now. You know, I mean,
Is there
So
is there ever
y'all are still good friends and still like
oh,
work, but
yeah,
just
yeah,
not recording. Yeah, just touring.
absolutely. We just, if I'm going to make a record, I'd rather make a record with me, and he feels the same way. You know, we do it.
No, I get it. I completely get
Fonte's kind of in that situation himself,
it.
right?
Been
I
there.
understand.
So were you,
I
Amir, in a whole different way? Like it's like it's interesting. I'm looking at Fonte and his group situation. I'm thinking about you and Black Thought and existing separately in your projects. It's kind of interesting.
But the thing is that the roots, like for me, like Tariq and I have an agreement that we can go and scratch our back. Like we're in a polyamorous relationship.
Mhm,
So if I need to get my back scratched elsewhere, I know that at the end of the day, I'm gonna come home and, you know, sort of come back to home base eventually, like check in. Hey, you okay? Da-da-da-da-da. But you know, I guess for a lot of times there's this thing where it's like if you're in a group situation that you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then there's always the thing where you miss it in 8 years. You're like, all right, let's rebuild the house again. You know, I just always wonder.
And then
about
you
that.
start realizing why you left the house to begin with. It's like, nah, I should have stayed gone.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Like,
Can I
fuck
ask
this.
in and you know, I understand this might be a personal question, but in a situation where I'm certain that you can't be partners with someone for that long of a time without it being arguments or whatever, or at least with a duo, it's kind of different when it's in a group dynamic. But do you two at least have your version of not going to bed angry,
Yeah,
you
so
know, or make sure that you're clear?
Yeah. Yeah. What does conflict resolution look like for you guys?
I we we never really we don't really fight. It's a funny thing. I mean, again, you know, we've known each other since we're kids. Uh, I think we sublimate it. I think there's a lot of you know, maybe maybe there's resentment and shit under the surface that doesn't come out, but we don't. We never fight. That's the best way I could put it. We just don't fight. We either let it go or bury it.
I see.
I dig it.
I have a question about your Philly home, your house on Quint Street, the one
Sure.
in Philly that still remains. You know, why was that, you know, a perfect creative enclave for you and John? Like,
Well, it was the time. There's something about that period of time. I got that place. I was married to this girl at the time, and uh, right. I was right out of school, and uh, it was just Philly was it was really a good time to be in Philadelphia back then. It was great music and just a great atmosphere, and that house was great. That was the Hall and Oates birthplace, really.
Right. Okay.
That's all I can say about it. I love that house. I renovated it actually. Yeah.
So for a whole new for a whole new generation of fans, um, a lot of them had their rebirth. I mean, a discovery of you via your legendary show live from Daryl's house.
Uh-huh.
Which what was the genesis of the idea of that, of you inviting guests over to jam and whatnot? And
Yeah, that was the OG Tiny Desk.
And is it streaming or what? Because
It's not right now. I'm waiting to restart it again. I'm
okay.
doing,
I'm waiting for my invitation.
You ain't done it yet? Oh, ooh, Daryl. Oh,
Anyway,
I think I actually did give you an invitation.
and we were on tour. Yes, you're right. I forgot.
oh,
Wow.
here.
Yes, we were.
Mm.
I forgot we were on tour. Forgive me. I pie
Shame.
my own face. Sorry.
My plan is to start it up again in some form, for sure.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
Daryl's
but-
house is operational all full year round, right?
Well, you mean the club, Daryl's house?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's in Pauling, New York. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
My sister lives in Westport, and yeah, she wants her own table there. She's there every show.
Yeah. I love having a club. I love clubs.
But seriously, Daryl, can you see old episodes anywhere? I was literally just thinking about that today because it was on an interesting network in the first place.
What? Can you see the episodes?
Can you see the old episodes? Yeah, can you see the old
Your
episodes?
archival.
Yeah.
Not all of them. Not my plan is to make them all available.
Okay, cool.
Gotcha.
Don't get that deal. Yes.
So right now, you are currently on your first solo tour. In a minute, what was the inspiration to do that? I mean, well, okay. As I asked that question, I also realized that we've all been on lockdown for damn near 2 years. So I'm certain. Well, let me ask, how did you? What were the 2 years of lockdown and quarantine like for you? Were you able to go into other forays of creativity in terms of like?
No, I went into hibernation. I've been, this studio house is where I lived, and I stopped making music. I didn't do anything because I had this feeling that when this whole thing blew over, that it was all going to be different. And I knew it was going to be different for me.
Mhm.
And a lot of reevaluation and just I've been traveling my whole life. I've been on the road my whole life, and to be in one place in lockdown, I just sort of embraced it. That's the best way I could put it. I just said, okay, here I am. I'm not seeing anybody but my sister who lives up the road, and that's really what I did for all that time.
And this was the longest that you've ever taken a break from not
Since
doing
I-
music, not.
since I was a teenager, yeah, for sure. And
Wow.
when I realized that we were coming out of it, I said, okay, now what am I going to do? It's reevaluation. I think a lot of people were thinking that way, but
Mhm.
Yes.
the way I'm looking at my life, my career, my creativity, everything, and that's why I'm putting out this body of work album to start it. It's sort of it's a new era to me, and whatever I wanted to do, I'm doing now. I'm not holding it back. I'm not letting circumstances dictate anything. I used this term before, but I'm going to just ride the horse direction it's going in.
I
Love
know
it,
that
man.
another area of creativity for you is like restoring houses and whatnot. Is that therapeutic for you?
Yeah, it's therapeutic. I love history. I love all that stuff. You can tell by this room that I'm in. But I it's sort of like making music. Antique architecture is what it's all about with me.
Oh,
And
okay.
and restoring old places and bringing them back to their period, what they were in their period, and and working with all these artisans and artists, which is like working with musicians and getting teams together and making a project happen, making something out of nothing. Or it's not unlike making a record. It's
Okay.
the same thing.
Is there a
So-
HGTV show I don't know about? Or
I
Should
did
be.
do a TV show about restoring an old house.
you said you did?
Yeah, I did.
I
I
thought
did.
it sounded familiar. Okay.
Restoration overhaul.
Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds familiar. Okay.
Yeah.
Your before after project. Could you tell us like um the inspiration behind it and the creative process to create it?
Well, I wanted to put together my alternative body of work. Everybody knows my work with John, but
Mhm.
not as many people know all these things that I've been doing for all these years, and I wanted to bring it out into the world, and I took excerpts from every album and included excerpts from the Life from Daryl Sass show and
Mhm.
put them all together. I didn't do them in chronological order. I had, I did them. I treated them the way I would treat any kind of album, and just put the songs together as I felt the flow would. I just felt the flow, and um, that's the best way I could put it. I'm showing the world that side of my music and the people that I worked with and all these different projects I've been doing for many years.
The ultimate mixtape for you, like the ultimate retrospective of your favorite songs, your personal favorites from your
Yeah,
solo catalog.
all the ones that are the ones I think are the great, the good, the best of the best.
Okay.
And and that's an introduction. It's a reintroduction to some people, but it's an introduction for a lot of people. And then I'm going to continue on with this and start making original songs. I'm already working on new songs with various people.
There's a Daryl, there's a version, there's a producer named Pomo. He did a version of I Can't Go For That. Have you heard it? I think it's on Spotify.
I
He
love
like
that
did
shit.
like that shit is hard as fuck. It's like
Pomo?
a Pomo. He did like it's kind of like a house kind of four to the floor version of I Can't Go For That. But it's
Yes,
still a
I
groove
spin
though.
it every time. Yes.
Yeah, that shit is a jam. I think you dig it.
Are you familiar with people dipping into your past and sort of reintroducing your music
Well, I
to
hear because I have to approve them. Number one.
Right.
So yeah, I hear what people are doing, and I love it when people mess around with my songs. I think it's great.
Daryl, I always wanted to ask you, what do you think after you guys did your thing and of course changed the way Philly music is looked at? What do you think about after you left and some of the other Philadelphia artists that came after you? Have you noticed anybody that locked in your ear? Or?
Uh, I don't know anybody. I'm trying to think of any.
It's like so many eras. It was, I mean, I ain't gonna say the roots because so and so is here, but as in, the music soul childs, the Jill Scotts, the
On Legend.
John Legends, well, college Philly.
Everybody knows. Yeah, I mean, they're all great. I mean,
Okay.
they're carrying on the tradition, man. It's always,
so before I go, I definitely want to ask you about these tour dates. Like for you, do you like touring still, or is the grass always greener on the other side? Like for you, at this stage in your life, when you see, because you're about to do like a 3-month or 2 to 3 month run for your solo tour. Like for you, is it like like getting up at like the idea of lobby call and early stuff and sound check and a routine? Is that, is it still exciting to you, or is it just like, I don't know?
well, it's when you're out there, you go like, oh fuck, yeah, it becomes hurry up and wait. It's it's routine, it's constant, moving around, doing all that. But when you're on stage, a bird's got to sing. I mean, it just feels like if you're having a good night and your monitors are good and everything's working, it's it's a spiritual experience. That's the best.
I know you're hitting Carnegie Hall. Is this the first time that you're playing Carnegie Hall as a solo act?
First time playing Carnegie Hall with anybody act. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's what's up, man.
Surprising.
I might have to peep that show. You know. Oh,
So I've
Questlove Supreme trip to Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
I have one final question from me, Daryl. And this is not, you've probably heard this before. It's not an original question,
okay. I'm sorry.
and it's not a joke. We're a lot of us out here still waiting for Rock and Soul Part 2, you know, as promised by the calling the original Part 1. So what's wrong with releasing another edition of that, a Part 2 with just deeper cuts from your immense catalog with John?
I think it's a good idea. Maybe I'll do it.
There you
That's
go.
Not a bad idea.
I have a question in closing. And I guess I should have asked it earlier. I mean, when people mention you, of course, you know, the term blue-eyed soul always gets tagged with you. When you think of blue-eyed soul, at least if you're kind of my age, the first thing you think of is Hall & Oates. Did you guys mind this tag at the time, or was it? I think every artist sort of collectively rolls their eyes of whatever like is pegged of them. But you know, when the term blue-eyed soul came up, like I feel like you guys were sort of the first out the gate to get that title. Like, did you mind it, or was it like, yeah, I hate that term?
Well, the first duo that ever got it was the Righteous Brothers. That's
Yes, that makes
where it
sense.
all came from.
That I did not know.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
Righteous Brothers was that's where the term that's whoever, I don't know what journalist used it, but that's where it all came from. I'm not nuts about it. You know, I'm a soul singer. I have blue eyes. Oates got brown eyes. Whatever. You know, I don't like to break categories down, especially those kind of categories.
I see.
Do you feel the honor in existing, thriving, and being an example in soul music in that way, though?
I'm happy to be respected in a world that I care about. And it's my baby food. It's what I grew up with. It's the source of my musical inspiration. So that's yeah. I mean, no matter what the production or the arrangement or even the song is, I'm still a soul singer in my heart, and that's where it generates from.
Wow, we're hearing
Yeah,
that
it
so
is.
much these days. Bonnie Raitt said that, and about the blues, and John said that, and Costello said that.
Yeah,
So it's just, you know, if that's what you grow up on, that's what you are.
that's right. That's absolutely true.
Well, hey, I just have to say, you know, you guys are, you know, I mean, you in general, like you're the soundtrack of you know my life as a music fan and in general, and I'm really pleased and happy that we did this episode, and I thank you very much, Daryl, for doing this with us and making this
Sure,
a
man.
special episode.
Well, thank you.
Daryl Hall, ladies and gentlemen, legendary Philadelphian, and you know this. Wait a minute.
TU.
One more question, please.
What?
One more question, and I swear to God, I'll let you go. I heard a rumor that you once stopped a robbery from happening once on tour.
Yeah,
Is this true?
that's true.
How? I've heard the rumor of it, but
Tell
never.
the story.
What?
Yeah, I'll tell you the story.
This is the encore, and I promise it's over.
Right. Because nobody ever asked about that. The first time that me and John went to Australia, right?
Okay.
We were in Melbourne, Australia,
Uh-huh.
and it was after a show, and we went to this restaurant, and nobody was there except for, it was after hours, and nobody was there except these two guys and their wives were sitting at a table next to us, and my bass player, his girlfriend, John, and our one of our minders. So it was, you know, some guy that was with us. And so we're sitting there, and suddenly this guy we look up and there's a guy standing there with a ski mask and a shotgun.
Oh, shotgun.
What year was this?
This was 1981, I'll say, something like that.
Jesus Christ, this is Private Eye's time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the guy, he starts waving the gun around and he says, give me your money, give me your money. And I remember the bass player, his name was Kenny. He pulled out a credit card and handed him a credit card. Get that fuck out of here. So we're all sitting there, and it's unreal I mean, you ask anybody in a situation like that, it's all very unreal. The guy had a ski mask and a shotgun, right? And he goes over to the next table, which was right next to us, and he starts pointing the gun at one of the women and says, give me your money out of your purse, right? And he put the gun down just enough that one of the guys grabbed the barrel of the gun and pulled it, and the other guy jumped on him. And then John jumped up and jumped on the guy, and then we all started jumping on this guy. And I tried to jump on him, and the bass player's girlfriend grabbed me around the leg and pulled me back. It says, save me, save me, save me. So I couldn't do anything because I'm fighting. She's like a little puppy dog or whatever. And I'm trying to fight her away and grab this guy at the same time. We basically broke the shotgun up, took the shells out, and then okay, he was disarmed. So then we held him, and by then the maitre d' or whatever it was, the guy that was there, had called the cops. The cops come charging up the stairs because we were on the second floor, and grabbed the guy, and basically threw him down the steps, and then took him away. And apparently he had robbed 25 restaurants, and he was called the Rusty Gun Bandit.
Oh, wow.
The rusty gun.
Ladies and gentlemen,
That sounds like you stopped
not see that
Samuel
coming.
Jackson from
Yeah.
robbing
Right. I was
McDonald's.
thinking the same thing, Fonte. I was like, this is pre-Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America. Okay.
Yeah.
Daryl Hall, legendary Crime Stopper, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, man.
Yo, dog, that's how you end the show.
Yeah.
I'm Pete Bill, Laia, Sugar Steve, Fontigolo, and I'm Questlove, the legendary Rock and Roll Hall of Fame God
Yes.
himself, Daryl Hall. Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you.
This is Questlove
Thank you for
Supreme. We will
everything.
see you on the next go round. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
Peace.
Daryl.